So, Jonathan and Rebecca here. We are on Kungsleden, or the King's Trail in Sweden, hiking from Ammarnäs to Hemavan. This trail is around 80 kilometers long and is split into 6 sections, so typically takes around 6 days to complete. It is one of the most famous treks in Sweden. It's the first time we're doing this trek. We brought our own tent and we brought food for 7 days, so this is actually the longest time we will be trekking for a consecutive amount of days with our own food and camping gear. So yeah, this will be interesting. We're looking forward to it. All right, here we go.
Let's do this.
Woo! What is it? Woo! Yeah, they're good. There are berries everywhere. Lingonberries, blueberries and cloudberries. It's really nice. First day done. 8 kilometers. It was a very beautiful hike. Really nice. What's for dinner?
It's goulash.
Chocolate muesli. So, we are leaving Aigert, heading towards Tärnasjö, which is about 19 kilometers away from here. So it's one of the longest days on the trek. Not too much sleep tonight, actually. It was a bit colder than we expected, but hey. All right, here we go. Alright, we've now trekked 8 kilometers from Aigert. We found this nice sort of shelter. So yeah, we'll prepare some lunch. 11 kilometers to go. we made it to Särve, and the destination, the second day of the trek. It was actually about 20 kilometers to get here. It's now about 6:30. Took us about around 9 hours. And they had a cabin here, the Swedish Tourist Federation, that you can book in advance if you don't have a tent and you want to sleep. But we have our tent, so we're marching on to find a spot close by a river. Yeah. This is the spot. We're back in our tent. It was a really good decision to take a bath. We're both disgusting after 2 days hiking. Yeah, we're just exhausted. Looking forward to tomorrow and getting a good night's rest. Good night. Alright, we are leaving Särve, headed for Tärnasjö, which is about 14 kilometers hiking today. So yeah, it's quite a chill day today compared to yesterday. It's about 8:30, so I think we will be there around 3 o'clock. Alright, here we go. One of the best feelings when hiking is for sure to remove the boots. That is amazing. And back on the road again.
I made it.
Right, arriving in Tärnasjö. First heavy rain on this entire trek just when we arrived. So, she's about 3:30 and we still got a lot of energy, so we decided to push on. What we did was to buy some really nice food, a can of ravioli, a can of goulash at the cabin in Tärnasjö. So we decided to treat ourselves with a little luxury today. This is a spot. Best scent spot so far. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling cozy here in my sleeping bag in the rain.
This rain has been going on for over an hour now. How good is that?
So good.
Good night. Morning.
Morning.
So, back on the trail. Day 4, it's about 8:30 in the morning. We're headed towards Syter. So this is section 4. From Tärnasjö to Syter, it's about 14 kilometers. And yeah, here we go. made it to Syterstugan, which marks the end of section 4, about 14 kilometers from Tärnasjö. Pushing on into section 5 towards Viterskalet.
chili con carne.
Good.
Yeah, pretty good actually. Good night.
A bit tired, but it's okay. Do you want the knusper muesli to breakfast?
Knusper muesli. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Here we go. What I think it is. Yes. So, that was Kungsleden from Ammarnäs to Hemavan, and if you would like to do this trek yourself, I will share with you some good to know details. There are 12 renowned so-called signature trails in Sweden, and this southern part of Kungsleden is one of them. The full Kungsleden trail is 400 kilometers long, but these final 80 kilometers makes up a portion of Kungsleden that is a Swedish signature trail appointed by the Swedish Tourist Federation. You can hike the trail in any direction and don't need to start in Ammarnäs like we did, but I prefer to have the highlight of a trek towards the end to help with motivation if things get tough. For us, the highlight was the beautiful U-shaped valley near Viterskalet close to Hemavan, so we started off in Ammarnäs. After arriving in Ammarnäs during the afternoon, we hiked to Aigert, which was only 8 kilometers long, but with a consistent incline until reaching our end destination for the day. The incline was never steep, so it was a fairly easy first day, taking us through a birch forest before ascending above tree line. Once in Aigert, you can refill your water bottles in a lake with drinkable water. You can also purchase freeze-dried food at the cabin if you opt for not bringing your own food, but there is not a guarantee they will have food in stock, so I advise you bring your own. Setting off on the second day, we left Aigert and hiked towards Särve. This section was 19 kilometers long and was mainly made up of stone fields and vast open landscapes. This is where we encountered the largest reindeer herd I have ever witnessed before, which was an amazing sight. Reaching Särve, there were a few spots to pitch our tent near the hiking cabin that you could pay for to also use the facilities nearby, but walking some additional 100 meters, there were some just as great flat ground spots that were free to use to pitch your tent. This is also a great place to wash yourselves off in a nearby somewhat secluded stream, although it was freezing cold. There were a lot of mosquitoes on the early parts of this trek, showing themselves the moment you stopped walking. I can highly recommend bringing a wearable mosquito net to prevent them from ruining your experience. The third day and the third section, we went from Särve to Tärnasjö. This was perhaps out of all the sections, the one that wasn't as spectacular as the rest. With that said, we did find an idyllic spot to have our lunch along the way. Once reaching Tärnasjö, the cabin had a lot of options to purchase canned food, which we treated ourselves with, even though we already brought our own. Again, you could pay the cabin steward to pitch your tent in some allocated spots nearby, but we kept walking for some additional 2 kilometers to pitch our tent in the wild instead. There were some great locations along the shores of the lake Tärnasjö, and it wasn't difficult to find a good spot. With that said, the Tärnasjö cabin could have been a good spot to stay, because they also had a sauna you could use to heat yourself up and possibly take a swim in the lake. On our fourth day and on the fourth section, we left Tärnasjö for Syter, which was a 14-kilometer hike first through a forest, following some swamps and progressing into an inland archipelago, where we hiked across a lot of small islands connected with bridges. Coming out of the lake, there was a final ascent until reaching Syter, from where you can view your first snow-capped mountains. We prepared our lunch inside the cabin, and if I had more time on this trek, I would have stayed here an additional day, just chilling out. It was my favorite cabin spot on the trail, surrounded by mountains, great views all around, and a river circling the grounds. It felt like a place from the Lord of the Rings movie, where hobbits would have made their living. It was very picturesque. We decided to hike the fifth section towards Viterskalet for an additional 12 kilometers on the same day, which was a fairly easy terrain covering open landscapes, so if you want to shorten the length of your trek, hiking from Tärnasjö directly to Viterskalet is a good stretch to combine the two sections for the same day. This section goes through a U-shaped valley that you can hike through for a couple of kilometers before reaching Viterskalet. It was definitely the highlight in terms of scenery. The final day we hiked from Viterskalet to Hemavan, that would mark the final destination of the trail. From Viterskalet you can add a day to ascend Norra Sytertoppen, which is a nearby mountain with the highest point in the region, with its 1,776 meters. Initially it was our plan to ascend Norra Sytertoppen, but the top was covered in fog, so we decided to skip the ascension. The final day on section 6 held some of the farthest stretching views and was a fairly easy hike for about 11 kilometers before reaching a cable car that you could take down to Hemavan. Took the cable car down, and you don't have to book it in advance, you can pay for it by card when you reach the bottom for about 100 Swedish crowns. With that said, you don't have to take the cable car and you can also just hike down. To summarize the trek, coming from Sweden myself, I have been through quite a few Swedish hikes, and I can honestly say this is so far my favorite. The trail was well marked and easy to follow with a great variety in terrain and wildlife. You can refill your water bottles in streams found along every section, and you can purchase food along the way if you want to, as well as book cabins in advance if you prefer not carrying and staying in your own tent. If you want to do this trek yourself and you have any questions, please comment below and I will help you out. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, as it ultimately enables me to get out and do more of these treks and videos to share. Some hikes I'm really looking forward to this year to share with you include Scotland and Iceland. Thank you very much for watching.